start the session. Today we have Maida Titel from Chanute, and she works with Jared Gilmore and Phillips Public Accountants, and she is here to answer your questions. She has a slideshow. We're going to try to videotape it, so if everything crashes, they'll just keep going. All right, I'm going to let her take over.
Thank you. I see a few familiar faces today, so welcome. I hope I can talk loud enough for you in the back to hear. Sometimes I kind of trail off and my voice goes down, so you'll may have to remind me, speak up. So for starters, my presentation is called an Auditor's Viewpoint. And I overheard a conversation here about IRS audits. So that's the first thing I want to clear up. We have nothing to do with the IRS. This would be an independent audit over your financial statements. And either the library or sometimes the city hires us to do the independent audit. So that's where we're starting from. And we're going to talk a little bit about internal controls today and see if we can improve some things. So the first thing I did when I was putting together my presentation, I was looking at librarians, and I saw that librarians needed a lot of different skills. First of all, it sounded like lots of education. I saw a lot of talking about master's degrees, ability to work with the public, of course. Should have lots of customers that need help, and you have to be a tech guru nowadays. And then what's usually not mentioned, but is often the case, is they also want you to be an accountant and keep track of your books. So in my audience today, just to get an idea of who I'm speaking with, how many of you are board members or on a board? Okay. How many of you are the actual librarian? Okay, so maybe 1 to 2. Okay, that's good. But did I miss anybody? Is there other positions that you have that? One or the other. Okay, right. So we're going to try to talk a little bit today to help our librarians be better accountants. Well, you might wonder what we're talking about when we're talking about internal controls. So first of all, put it in some examples of everyday life controls that you have to maybe help make that a little more understandable. So if you're going on a trip, some of your controls, you might arrange for somebody to pick up your mail so that your mail doesn't stack up and people know that you're gone. You might set your thermostat to a different temperature for your house. Unplug small appliances possibly. I do that to heard a lot of stories about electrical fires. To protect your personal items, of course you're going to lock your door before you leave on your trip. You might have a fireproof safe in your house, whether you're leaving or not. And you might keep things in a safe deposit box at a bank. Those are all to protect your property. Another example of internal controls when you're paying your personal credit card. You probably review the charges that are on your statement. Make sure there aren't any charges that weren't yours. Compare them to receipts. Is that what I really paid for that? You don't want somebody to add on some extra charges while they were ringing you up. And you might probably ought to check your statement to make sure there weren't some additional fees added on there by the credit card company. Okay, so internal controls at the library. It's a piece of the puzzle. So what do internal controls tell us when, for instance, when we're doing an audit, this was a little more accountant speak here, but try to go through these a little bit just to give you a better idea. So, occurrence or existence. Do assets and liabilities actually exist on a given day? Did the recorded transactions occur during the current year? Or did they take place in an earlier or later and they didn't get posted to the correct year? So that's occurrence and existence. We want to make sure, if you're saying you have this much cash at December 31st, we want to make sure that's really the amount of cash assets that you have. And for a lot of libraries in Southeast Kansas, when it comes to assets, we're really only looking at cash for audit purposes. We don't count your books in your library. We don't even look at what the building is worth or what equipment you have. We're mainly concerned with cash. Most of our libraries follow what's called the Kansas Municipal Audit and Accounting Guide, and it's more of a cash basis. Rights and obligations. Do assets and liabilities reported in the financial statement represent the rights and obligations of your library as of the date of the statement on receipts and disbursements? So one thing we do record usually is payables that you have outstanding at the end of the fiscal year. So are we picking up all those bills that you haven't paid yet, and make sure that we really know how much you owe? Completeness are all transactions and accounts that should be presented in the financial statement actually included. So again, did we pick up all the payables and got all your bank accounts? Was there another bank account out there that you didn't really include because you thought that was something special? Sometimes we've seen a small library, they raise money on the side, so they thought that money didn't need to be included because that was special. That was something special. But if it has a library's name on it, then all the bank accounts need to be included. Accuracy or valuation and allocation. Are assets and liabilities valued appropriately? Well, for a library and for a KMAG audit, that's usually pretty simple, because usually we're just talking about cash and it's the value that it is, it's not some other amount. So, cutoff are all transactions and events recorded in the proper period. Just like we said a couple lines up, we want to make sure that whatever took place actually was for that date. For payables, it does get recorded when the service is provided or when you receive the goods, put them in service. So, just trying to think of an example for that's basically going to apply to accounts payable. So you ordered some books, you got them, let's say we're talking about a December 31st year end, so you got them right before the end of the year, but you didn't pay your bill until January. Well, because you ordered them and you got them, and you're probably already, even if they're in the back room still, you have them. So we need to make sure that bill gets included in your payables. And classification and understandability. Are transactions and events recorded in the proper accounts? Okay, we don't want a bill for your utilities to end up in the account that says you're buying books. So just did the items get in the right account? So those are some of the controls over financial statements and how they total in a broader sense. Is this your library? I thought that was a really cool picture. Wow, that's big. I don't know how they get to those. What's up at the top? What does the library need to operate? This is some of the things that accounting, proper accounting can tell you. So for your library, we need funding. You have how much money can I spend? And you want accurate records. The same way you rely on a balanced checkbook and a budget for your personal life, you need that even more so with your library. Methods of tracking revenue and expenses. Maybe you have accounting software like QuickBooks, or there are many different types of software out there. Maybe use an Excel spreadsheet and you have columns for different types of expenses. The thing on that is watch your formulas. You see, so many times you add a line at the bottom and then your formula for the total didn't pick up the bottom line. So always watch your formulas. Maybe start using a column or pad. Some of you remember the many columns of green column or pad? And I thought, let's still sell them. I know some people that still like to use them, but personally, I don't like adding up all the numbers when I can do a formula in Excel instead. Okay, a statement of receipts and disbursements. This is what we see in a lot of libraries. Just list your revenues and your disbursements, expenses. So importance, the accuracy of coding transactions. So again, like I was saying before, make sure it's in the right column. And with an Excel spreadsheet or column or pad, that's probably maybe a more common mistake because it might be easy to get in the wrong column. You think you're in one row or column than what you are. Even with software, sometimes you can click on the wrong thing, but it is important to get that coded properly. The importance of the overall is it keeps you on budget for the year. If you need to know how much revenue, how much expenses you've had to, if you're halfway through the year, how much do I have the rest of the year? And overall, you're going to use it to plan next year's budget, possibly. How much did I spend this year? Maybe my utilities went up, so I'm going to have to budget more for utilities next year. So all those is just that it's not just important for an audit, but it's important in the daily use of for your library too. And most libraries have tight budgets. I haven't seen any libraries that have lots of extra money to spend. So it's even more important to stay on track with where you're at. The accuracy of the totals. So does beginning cash plus the receipts less the disbursements equal the ending cash? Be surprised how many times we get statements that no, they don't. So somewhere something's missing. So that's something you can check yourself to see if those numbers add up. When the numbers don't balance, auditors can spend a lot of time trying to track down the difference, and that can cost the library money. Sometimes we're on a fixed fee, but even when we are, if we spend a lot of extra time one year, that probably means that next year the bill's going to go up a little bit more, even with fixed fees. And sometimes things are charged by the hour. Yes?
Would you like questions at the end or as we go along?
Anytime you want, that would be fine.
May I ask a favor and go back just a step?
Sure.
Where you're talking about the accuracy of coding transactions, how detailed should those codes be? Is there a preferred list of what categories libraries might have?
It's really going to be more up to how detailed you want to track it. For if you were actually having an audit presentation, then for KMAG, if you had personnel services, commodities, and contractual services. And I can explain better what those mean if you, those three are really the main things that we need to have, but many libraries do break it down quite a bit more. And especially if you're using a budget to track the things, you probably want to know some of the things I've seen from libraries, purchase of books, videos, and other or electronic materials, especially things like utilities, any kind of salaries, payroll taxes, trying to think of some other examples, other supplies, maybe you even might want to break supplies down into different categories if, so it's more what information will help you in the library and for your budgeting purposes.
And just as a follow-up, what level of QuickBooks could you recommend or suggest to small libraries?
It doesn't need to be one of the more expensive ones. They are selling QuickBooks online now, but we have not had very good experience with it. So I don't know that I would necessarily recommend QuickBooks Online, but just a basic QuickBooks, I'm sure, would do if you want QuickBooks. I mean, like,
And if we do payroll, we need to get the payroll edition.
yeah, if you were going to run payroll through it, and that does make it a little more expensive because I believe you have to purchase a payroll module every year.
Okay. Thank you.
Taking up with that. Okay.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
What is KMAG that you referenced?
Kansas Municipal Audit and Accounting Guide. The state has people on a board that help with that, but each year they put together a new guide. It doesn't change too much from year to year, but it tells you kind of the accounting that you're supposed to follow and gives you a lot of examples of disclosures and reports and things. But it's what the difference between KMAG and as opposed to that would be generally accepted accounting principles, which is GAAP. So the difference between the two, KMAG, as far as your assets, your cash is really the main thing. You don't list capital assets. You don't list receivables. If you had some investments, those would be included. On the liability side, if you had long-term debt, like you purchased a building, it is only in the disclosures and not on the actual balance sheet. You do have accounts payable, so that's your main liability on that. If you want to follow KMAG and you have an audited financial statement, the board needs to approve a resolution each year that is stating we don't feel like GAAP is appropriate for us, so we're going to follow KMAG instead. And there's exact wording for that resolution that you type up, and then at a meeting, the board should pass that resolution each year if you were going to follow that. But it definitely makes audits much easier. The financial statements are less complex.
If they follow the GAAP, do we have to do a GAAP resolution yearly?
If you're following GAAP, you don't do anything as far as a resolution or anything. Just if you're following KMAG instead.